You're investing as a solo capitalist. Talk through kind of the thought process of why invest as a solo capitalist. What are the advantages? Maybe what some of the disadvantages are as you've been doing it for a while now.
Yeah, we were talking about this before the show, but I've always invested on my own, and I've just developed a lot of confidence in my picking ability. And so I went through the process this year of like asking myself, do I need to bring on other investors, other GPs? And just in the past year, LPs, limited partners have become so accepting of solo capitalists where to me, it's an advantage right now because it's so competitive. And if you can move with a slightly faster speed by being solo, you can win deals. And I led a seed deal this week where I got to them first and I said yes before they could talk to other investors. And if I had a team, I would need to pull in someone else, and it would be this whole process. I think the key is building a support system around you, either through platforms like AngelList or by setting up your own back office where you don't have to worry about the other parts of your job. And so you can just focus entirely on investing. I also think a lot of people, as you have a big kind of online presence. If you have a big online presence and you can raise money, bring on a partner in most cases just doesn't really make sense if you can raise a fund and get going up, unless you find the perfect complement to you. And I've gone through the process of talking to a few folks about partnering, and it just hasn't, back to like dating, like I haven't found my perfect match, but maybe one day somebody will come into my life and I just need to work with them. But until that happens, I'm so happy doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah. How do you think about the balance between like speed of decision making and quality of decision making? This is something I constantly go back and forth on, right? Because when you're a solo capitalist, you definitely have speed, but you don't have those investment committee meetings. You don't have partners that you can kind of bounce ideas off of. How do you are there things that you do to get feedback or have sounding boards? And then also, how do you just think about the trade-off between speed and quality of decisions?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's two parts of this. One is just this idea of a prepared mind. And so it's doing the work before you have that meeting, or knowing what you're looking for and having seen enough kind of like different versions of an idea. You've gone through the idea maze, and when you see it, you just know, like you're like, I've seen 10 of these companies and there's this slightly different twist where this is actually the company to back. So having a prepared mind is a big part of it. The second part is building your support system in terms of peers and people you invest with. So I invest really often with the same people. I know we're on cap tables together, but I invest with guys like Ryan Hoover, great investors like Lee Jin, Harry Stebbings, Tatum Rahul from Superhuman. So we're always doing deals together. Josh Buckley's another one. And so I'll send deals to those people. Maybe I'll kind of like be around the hoop and thinking about committing, and I just get their reaction. So it's like having an investment committee, but we all have different balance sheets and different funds. And so you get that peer feedback. But I think being an investor can be a really lonely job, as you probably know. And so you need to figure out who your peers are going to be. And a lot of people build peer groups within investing. They try and go really wide. Like they have 100 people who they catch up with every couple months, and it's not a very intimate relationship. But I've kind of just like picked, and it's happened naturally, like 10 people who we just love to bullshit all day long about investing, and we challenge each other, and it's probably what it feels like to have an investment committee.
Yeah. How do you think about follow-on investments in terms of you're investing at the pre-seed and seed? Do you try to save a bunch of capital and kind of invest through the stack? Do you just say, hey, look, I'm going to make a good decision pre-seed and seed, and then I'll just take the dilution later on? What's the strategy or thought process?
Yeah, for me, I have reserves baked into my fund. A lot of people view these smaller funds as being first check funds, and then you kind of spin up SPVs for your winners. I talk to a lot of people who are smarter than me. Mike Maples from Floodgate, Chris Dixon from Andreessen Horowitz, and they all insisted, and they showed me data that suggested having reserves would increase my performance as long as I could pick the right companies to double down on, which is an entirely different ability. So I have 50% reserves. I'll occasionally do. I'll see a great Series A. Occasionally, I didn't invest in the seed, and if I do those, I call my reserves like flexible reserves. So I'll take money out of my reserve bucket and do the deal, even though I didn't invest in the pre-seed or seed. But out of my fund, I think we've invested in 45 companies. I'm looking to deploy reserves into like my top 8 companies. And I don't know. The hard part about investing is I know I'm a pretty good first check picker, but TBD on if I'm the right, if I'm good at reserves and reserves management. And so I'll be curious to see how that plays out.
Are there anything other than just pure returns that you're looking at to see how you'll measure whether you're a good kind of reserve picker or not?
For me, again, I worked on revenue teams. Like I'm very dollar driven. And so, there's no kind of like I'm going for returns, and there's I don't get kudos for anything else. So I want to 5x my fund, or there's some scenario where my fund does really well and becomes kind of a legendary fund, and I want to be those stories where people say, Chris Sacca's first fund was like this because he had Uber. Like everybody wants to have that legendary fund. So that's all I care about. And that's how you stay in the business. If you can't return capital to investors, I'll be out of this game. I'll be back on product teams after fund 2. So I'm really, I'm really kind of returns driven. It's hard because you meet great entrepreneurs and maybe your check size isn't big enough that they give you, or maybe you love them, but you just don't see the kind of market potential in what they're doing. And you have to say no all day long, which is the hardest part about this job. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I think about the world.
Makes sense. What are some of the downsides to the solo capitalist model? We talked a little bit, maybe just about kind of being out on an island. Is there anything else that you've noticed as a downside?
Yeah, I think sometimes you can be viewed in the market or as entrepreneurs as being kind of like an angel size check. So if you start raising a larger fund, maybe you raise, $40 million fund, or even I've seen solo capitalists raise $100 million funds, and you're asking for a $1 million check. And then they have this other fund that has a platform, and they have a platform team, and they have, 10 partners. And it's like, you can imagine how that model to some entrepreneurs, it appears to be a better place to go. And it's just different people view solo capitalists as being, you're either viewed as a fund or you're viewed as an angel. And so those are hard conversations, because I think that right now, again, like if there's a great company, there's going to be dozens of investors trying to get on the cap table. And why are you the person who deserves a 500K check or a 250K check, which once you start going above 250K, it starts to become hard at the pre-seed and seed. You have to convince them that you're either their second or third largest check. And then maybe you make some compromises on quality at that point. And so it's this kind of cat and mouse game of knowing how big your fund should be based on how much power you think you have in the market, and how you're viewed as entrepreneurs, or viewed by entrepreneurs.